Jennifer Wortz, welcome to the studio today. It is such a pleasure to have you here for our inaugural. This is our first time at this type of a venue, and we're going to be talking to you about some inaugural things you're going to be doing as well as our new 35th state representative. So welcome to the studio.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Your mother,
Yeah.
can we talk about her?
Yes.
A nurse
absolutely.
at Hillsdale Hospital for 3 decades.
Yeah.
That had to be rewarding. You know, your father was in county government, an original supervisor. Did you know that way back when? And served on the. I think at the time he just got on. Your brother was telling me, on the board of commissioners, at a time in which the supervisors were not automatically a board of commissioner, but your dad was. But then a county treasurer for how many years?
36.
Like
So
200
he
it
was
felt like,
elected in 1980. So
Yeah.
I never remember him not being,
being a county treasurer.
bivocational because
Yeah.
he was county treasurer and still farmed.
Yeah.
Yep. And then retired in
Yeah,
2016.
I think he farmed first and then was the county treasurer.
Yes,
But it's
yes,
okay.
yes,
We
yes.
always used to tease him about that. But then your mom was a nurse,
Yes.
and she spent the greatest part of her life and career
Mm-hmm.
here at Hillsdale Hospital. And that influence, you had firsthand a glimpse at healthcare, and probably heard and saw the stories that your mom would share with you about some of the faces that she, would see in healthcare and the challenges and the struggles. I'm sure you remember those conversations many times.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, it was very interesting when I was outdoor knocking. I always kind of just assumed people would know me because of my dad. But when I
Yeah.
would introduce myself in Hillsdale County, there were countless people who said, "Oh, I had your mom as a nurse.
Yeah.
Oh, your mom was such a great nurse. I
yeah.
loved your mom as a nurse."
Oh,
So, yeah, I sent her a text one day and said, "I think you may help me get as many
Absolutely,
votes."
as Dad did. Yeah, I think
Yes.
she's more liked than your dad.
I
But I'm
think
just
so.
saying,
I
okay,
think a little
we'll leave
bit.
it right there. I don't want Gary's wrath. Let's talk about the campaign trail, because you were out on the campaign trail, and I'm going to ask you a question. Do you feel that you met a lot of people? You heard a lot of issues. There's a lot of hurting people, people that cannot afford to buy their drugs that they need, their medications and prescriptions, and they have to make choices between their medicine and maybe paying a bill. You saw the faces of devastation. You've knocked on doors where individuals can't even afford food. You've been in districts in areas I know for a fact, because you were down at a time that I was down there as well, in areas where some houses didn't even have electricity because it's tough economically. So did any of the campaigning you did and that you continue to do, because it is still work, what shaped you during that period? Did anything change your understanding of Hillsdale? You grew up here as a kid, you were an FFA, you were the Waldron Queen, at the end of the day, but you left, you came back. Talk to us about that experience of campaigning and what you may have learned or not learned.
Yeah, I think ultimately door knocking was one of my favorite things because I did get to meet so many people and I got to hear stories. You hear some of the great stories of, people who have lived here and started small businesses and, survived here.
Right.
But then you hear the heartbreaking stories. You hear stories where, they have no job because their company's no longer here in Hillsdale, or they're working multiple jobs. Retirees, that was another one you encounter a lot because they're home and just some of their struggles.
Yeah.
And it definitely was very impactful.
Did anything in particular change your mind on a particular issue, maybe, or maybe even just move the needle a little bit to make it more of a priority in your upcoming tenure in administration, from anything that you've dealt with on the campaign trail?
Yeah, actually, probably the biggest thing, and I have a meeting coming up in this, is some prison reform.
Yeah.
I've talked to several people who have worked as corrections officers,
Yeah.
and the lack of support and also pay and benefits.
Yeah.
And our prisons are, they're just not being staffed
Right.
properly. They're
Right.
struggling big time with that.
Sure.
So that's been a big issue. And
Yeah.
also then too, talking with you about the struggles of rural healthcare.
Yeah.
Obviously I live in Branch County and the challenges that we're facing, ProMedica there no longer has an OB unit anymore.
Right.
So that people are going to
Driving
have
further.
to deliver their babies in
Yeah.
other locations. And, that really affects your growth, right?
It does.
If you can't deliver children in
Yeah.
your own community,
Can't
it
take care of them from that
may
age.
not
Yeah. Things aren't
be
going to look so good.
promoting people
Yeah.
coming to your community.
So let's talk about that. Great segue, by the way. I didn't even set you up
Yeah.
for that. But, we talk about rural health. Your mother was in rural health all of her career, probably helped put, kids through college even. Let's talk a little bit about your thoughts on rural health, if you would. Give us a sense of, what did you, growing up, you encountered it a little bit differently, I would say, than you're probably experiencing now because you have to shepherd the voice of 50,000 people in Hillsdale, 40-some thousand in Branch. But what are your thoughts on rural healthcare from the little bit that you've seen?
Well, I think it's farther for everyone in rural America to get to healthcare.
Yeah.
And, I think for us, Hillsdale Hospital has always been this kind of beacon. To be honest, we often drive here for healthcare
Right.
because we're 20 minutes away, even though we live in Branch County.
Thank you for doing that, by the way.
Yeah. And part of it is just because of the local support staff. I think that's another thing that has suffered in healthcare in general. When you start bringing in outside people in who don't have a connection to your
It's
community,
tough. Yeah.
they're not invested in caring for those people.
I agree with you.
And that's something that is near and dear to my heart in really, whether it's education, whether it's healthcare, electing people that represent you, that
Right.
have a connection to your community
Right.
and know what the struggles are there.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have a large Amish community. That's
do.
something that's
We do.
very unique here.
Yeah.
And
Who, by and large, have no insurance.
right? Yeah.
They're making cash payments when
Yep.
they can, and that becomes a struggle for them. And how are they going to travel in their buggy?
Yeah.
100 miles away.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. And then we have obviously a lot of people, and you shared this with me, that are just uninsured in our
Correct.
area.
Yeah.
And so, because you are a nonprofit, you provide them services,
do.
but that
It's tough.
that comes at an expense to someone,
It
right?
does.
Like nothing is ever free.
That's
And
true.
so, how do we help continue to sustain
Yeah.
local health care to be able to service rural America well?
Yeah.
Another thing that's near and dear to my heart is the lack of mental health care in rural areas. And we dealt with that firsthand. I had a brother who committed suicide in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was months until he was going to be able to see a psychiatrist.
I know.
And that's really what he needed.
He did.
And, that is just, it's a shame. And in that psychiatrist was the closest one was
know.
Kalamazoo.
Sure.
And so when you're struggling and you're already depressed and you're financially struggling and you think of adding that burden to someone, I've seen stories people post all the time on Facebook, need help with getting somewhere, getting treatment, getting to a doctor's appointment. I think you sharing that you guys now have a transportation. That's huge.
It is.
I think of both of my grandmothers who lived there, and my one grandmother lived her entire life here, other than she was born in Pioneer and moved here at 2 years old and died in Hillsdale County, but on a fixed income.
Yeah.
She couldn't have driven to medical treatment in Detroit or Ann Arbor. That's not feasible.
Right.
And so providing healthcare to people, it's our basic needs that we need cared for, and
Right.
to do that locally. And I think one of my priorities is also going to be we've talked about this a lot in the Republican Party in the House, is how do we create a soil in which people can grow businesses, small businesses, or even bring good businesses here to Michigan, where the last 4 years, a lot of the policy, especially the last 2 years, has just been on giving corporate handouts. And large corporations don't need handouts.
Yeah.
What we need is a fertile soil where small businesses can grow and thrive, and small rural hospitals can also
I would
be
agree.
sustainable.
I would agree. And if you could pick a favorite committee, what would be of your great interest to be on a committee? That hasn't happened yet, right?
No,
committee
it's
assignments.
not.
How does that work in Lansing? When do you know about those?
Yeah, so they're working through us. Obviously, we took back
Yeah.
the House, which
Right.
is super
Right.
exciting. Representative Fink is slightly jealous, I think, of me going in. He said it's not fair, but
Yeah, a little different than when he was in.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the fact that we'll have a majority, so we're working on that. I have two. Mine
Yeah.
are education and ag.
Okay.
Those are near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Regulatory reform needs to happen in agriculture as well. That's been a huge hindrance.
Sure.
So
FFA state officer, weren't you?
I was state secretary,
See, and
98, 99.
Now, test my memory here, but you also served with posthumous.
Yeah, Lisa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah,
former
Lisa
lieutenant
Foster's-
governor
Yep.
daughter,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And had
Well,
a chance.
Yes. And Lisa ran as for lieutenant governor. I guess she did not get that.
Yeah, she did,
yes,
didn't she?
with Bill Schuette.
Yes, she did. That's
Yeah.
right. I forgot
Yeah.
about that. So connections in agriculture are very deep in your
Mm-hmm.
family. Healthcare is very deep in your family. I would just encourage you to remember your friends in
Yes.
healthcare
I
as
will.
you are in Lansing. There's some very harmful legislation right
Mm-hmm.
now during lame duck. Nurse staffing ratios, cutting 340B, a lot of challenges. Rest assured, you'll hear from me
Mm-hmm.
a lot, in terms of what we need to advocate to keep our community hospitals local.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important that we stay independent. And so a lot of challenges that await you in Lansing, but I couldn't think of a better rounded person to be able to accomplish those tasks than Jennifer Wortz. So
Thank you.
we are excited to watch what the next few years bring us as a hospital, as a state, and to see the work that you're going to do. So if someone wants to get a hold of you,
Yeah.
what's the best means today to do that prior to your arrival in Lansing?
Yeah. So they can go to my website, jenniferwortz.com, and you can send me a message there.
Yeah.
Or my email is votejen@jenniferwortz.com.
And when do you officially get sworn in?
So officially, start date is January 1st, which is a
January 1st.
holiday.
Okay.
So January 8th is our first day in session,
Okay.
where I'll be sworn in.
Nice. It's going to be a fun time,
so,
isn't it?
yep.
Family's going to gather around, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
so.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Jennifer, it's been a great pleasure to have you here
Thank
in our
you.
studio for
Yeah.
our inaugural
Yeah.
conversations around the table here about things that matter the most to people in our community. 35th District, right?
Correct.
35th District,
And I
that
just,
changed from the 58th now to the 35th.
yeah, I want to say thank you to you as well. Thank you for having me, and thank you for working as hard as you have to keep the doors open and the
thank you.
lights on. And
We're gonna keep fighting.
this as a great place for healthcare needs in our community because it is needed.
Well, thank you very
Yeah.
much. And with that, it's been a pleasure to have
Thank
you
you.
on our show today. And
Yeah.
we look forward to having you back maybe in a year.
Yeah.
Or even sooner to
I'll
talk about some of
probably
the
know
priorities.
more or
We'll know
less.
a
I
lot.
don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I think you'll know a lot more. And you'll meet this word called gridlock, I'm sure, at some point
Yeah,
that's going to
yeah,
frustrate you.
yeah.
But keep up the good fight.
Thank you.
Remember your friends back here in Hillsdale. And thanks for joining us today.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks.